Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So you may or may not be aware that there was a presidential debate last night. There were actually two presidential debates last night. There was, of course, the one that got a lot of media attention that was the Democratic presidential candidates debate where they had, I don't know, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and a couple other people up on stage, and they were saying some stuff about government's not big enough. We need more government. The other presidential debate is one that you probably did not even know was happening, and it happened completely online. It was a debate among several of the people seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president in 2016, and I took part for just a little bit last night because it was being hosted by the California Libertarian Party. It was happening prime time, their time, which means it was happening kind of late at night here on the East Coast. So I have decided for the Ask Me Anything today that I will actually answer a couple of the questions that I did not answer last night because, quite frankly, I did not see these questions until this morning because I had to bow out to get some sleep because, it was getting late. So what I did, and I'll post a link in the show notes so you can go through, read the questions, read my answers, read the answers of the other candidates that are running. But what I did is I posted, hey, sorry, but, it's late here on the East Coast. I've got to go to bed, but I'll gladly answer any questions if you send me an email. Unfortunately, nobody sent me an email, but there were a couple of questions that got posted afterwards. I answered one of them this morning. On the two that I'm going to answer during the show, I actually put, if you don't mind, I'll answer these during my Q&A on my Ask Me Anything. So let me delve in now to the Ask Me Anything. The first question, I would like to ask what your plan is to get the most visibility and attention to the Libertarian Party and libertarianism so we can get a larger vote total in November 2016. Will you promote fellow libertarian candidates who are also seeking office in their districts? So let me answer the latter part of this question first. The will you, as assuming that I wind up getting the presidential nomination from the Libertarian Party, would I promote fellow libertarian candidates? And the answer is as long as they're actually libertarian. And what exactly do I mean? Because there's, the word libertarian that is being used in two different contexts here. So there's the big L, capital L libertarian, which means someone who is a member of the Libertarian Party. And then there is small L libertarian, which means someone who identifies with libertarian philosophy, that of smaller government, more personal freedoms. So when I say that I would support libertarian candidates who are actually libertarian, what I'm saying is I would support big L libertarians who are small L libertarians. Meaning if somebody, let's just take for instance a certain person seeking the Libertarian Party of Florida's U.S. Senate nomination. This person has some positions that, well, quite frankly, do not come off as very libertarian. On his website, he has a list of failings of the U.S. federal government, and one of them is abolishing a eugenics program. That does not sound very libertarian when you're saying it's a failing of the U.S. federal government to abolish a eugenics program. Eugenics is not libertarian. Eugenics is very authoritarian. This person also refers to himself as a fascist, a white Southerner with both words capitalized, and says that he supports white civil rights. So this person comes off very much as a racist and a fascist, self-described fascist, by the way. So that person I absolutely would not endorse, because that person is promoting things that I do not support. So if that person were to actually wind up getting the Senate nomination in Florida, I would not campaign with that person. If someone running for, let's say, state representative in, I don't know, Vermont, were running as a libertarian, and they're saying, if elected, I will do everything I can to abolish the income tax in Vermont. And that's their sole platform. They're just running on one thing, abolish the income tax. I would most definitely, given the opportunity, I would campaign with that person. I would make a joint appearance with that person. If the person was running on a single platform of tax and regulate cannabis, no, I would not campaign with that person. So I would be very discretionary on which libertarians I campaign with. And the way libertarian and actually all minor party elections work is there's not so much a coattail effect as there is a bottom-up sort of pyramid effect, meaning that the local level libertarians get more votes and bring in more votes for the top of the ticket libertarians. Same thing goes with Green Party, Constitution Party, and the like. Whereas with the Republicans and Democrats, it's the opposite, to where the top of the ticket brings in votes for the bottom of the ticket. But to answer the question, would I promote fellow libertarians or fellow libertarian candidates? Yes, as long as I supported what it is that they were running on and what their platform is. If they're promoting things that I don't support, then absolutely I would not campaign with that person. I would not give that person an endorsement. The first part of the question, what is your plan to get the most visibility and attention to the Libertarian Party and to libertarianism so that we can get the largest vote total, or rather get a larger vote total in November 2016? Well, my plan is the same as what I'm doing now, to as loudly and as boldly as possible promote libertarian ideologies, that of lower government, more personal freedom, that you have every right as everybody else. No individual has more rights than you do. And that means that you have the right to do with your body as you choose, as long as you do not cause unjust harm to another person. That means if you and 3 other people decide you want to get into, some sort of no-holds-barred steel cage fight where the winner is the first person to, cut somebody's finger off, well, everybody is agreeing to that, so go for it. Now, if somebody's being forced into that situation, then absolutely not. You do not have a right to, cut somebody's finger off without their permission. Not that I'm advocating for cutting off fingers. I'm just saying there's a difference between just and unjust harm and mutual combat. So there's another question that I'll get to in just a moment here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake Security Company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Before I jump into the next question, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, Roberts and Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. The next question that I'm going to delve into says, at last Saturday's Liberty Fest in New York City, Gary Johnson said he privatized 50% of the prisons in New Mexico as governor, and that he did it because he saved roughly 30% by going private over government-operated prisons. Do you agree with that policy? And there's a short answer and a long answer. And the short answer is no. No, I do not. And that requires the longer answer. Because on the surface, it just, well, why don't you want to save money? Well, I absolutely want to save money, but the question is, save money at what cost? And that's something that you hear a lot, or at least I hear a lot in the New Hampshire legislature when they talk about, budget cuts. Well, sure, we can cut the budget here by 2%, but at what cost? Somebody think of the children. But in this case, the cost is sort of the unseen, and some of that is sort of coming to the fore right now. There was a story from a couple of years ago about some of the, quote-unquote private prisons that are actually suing various state governments because the state is violating the contracts by not keeping enough inmates in the prison. So what you have now with this thing they call private prisons, it's not really private because, well, it's still, the prisons are, yes, it's a private company running it, but the justice system is still government run. So you've got this weird corporate extension of government, if you will. So it's really what Mussolini called fascism, where you've got this corporate extension of government or government extension of a corporation. So private prisons I absolutely do not support in the current state. So if we had something where it was a completely free market justice system to where it's not a government agency signing a contract with some company saying, you will handle prison operation for us, and here's all of the inmates. If it was free market, private justice, to where, people actually had to cause unjust harm to someone before they could wind up going before a judge, then maybe I would support private prisons, but currently absolutely not. So let me talk, before I get into some of the information about the prison quotas and lawsuits, let me talk a little bit more about what a private justice system would look like. So oftentimes you'll hear libertarians say, no victim, no crime. And as I've said on this show before, that while it sounds good, it's a good platitude, that statement has absolutely no bearing in history, because the term crime derived from an offense against the king. A tort is an offense against another person. So no victim, no crime sounds good, not accurate. But let's just go with that for a second. And instead of me using the word tort, which is actually when you cause damage to someone else. So, for instance, if I vandalize your house, I have committed a tort against your property. And I then would owe you restitution. So that's what a private free market, an actual free market justice system would look like, is people would wind up being made whole and then being compensated for the time they were deprived of whatever. So if I steal your television, I come into your house, I take your television, and you know that I did it because you've got a security camera somewhere, and yep, there's Darryl walking in the front door, taking my television, walking out the front door, and oh yeah, by the way, I broke the door off the hinges. Well, not only would I have to reimburse you for your television by either giving you the television back, or if I, completely destroyed it and, sold the parts, whatever, I must buy you a new television. I must repair your front door, and then I should compensate you for the time that you were without a television and a front door. So restitution, in the sense of making the person whole by giving them what it is that you took from them, plus some additional damage to compensate them for the time they were deprived of the thing. And the reason that extra step is needed is the deterrent factor. Because if all you're doing is making petty criminals return the thing that is stolen, then, well, they're going to just keep breaking into people's homes for the thrill of, I can steal this television and nothing's going to happen because all I have to do is give it back to them tomorrow. So there must be some additional punishment to sort of teach them, like, theft is wrong, in addition to just return the item. So return the item and then compensate for the time that they were deprived of the item. In the case of, let's just say I vandalize your house. I should have to restore the house to whatever condition it was before. So not just scrape off the graffiti, probably scrape off the graffiti, put a new coat of paint on it, and then some sort of financial restitution for the time that your house was not at proper condition, if you will. So let me now jump into a story here from the Huffington Post from a couple of years ago. It's actually from September of 2013. The title is Prison Quotas Push Lawmakers to Fill Beds and Derail Reform. After 3 violent inmates escaped from an Arizona private prison in July 2010, prompting a 2-week multi-state manhunt, state corrections officials demanded improvements and stopped sending new inmates to what they called a dysfunctional 3,300-bed facility. Less than a year later, the company that runs that prison, Management and Training Corporation, or MTC, threatened to sue the state of Arizona. A line in their contract guaranteed that the prison would remain at 97% full. They argued that they had lost nearly $10 million from the reduced inmate population. State officials renegotiated the contract but ended up paying $3 million for empty beds as the company continued to address problems, according to state documents and local news accounts. So what you have here, in just this one example, it's not a private company that is doing the state a favor of, we'll handle this for you. It's a private company doing something to benefit themselves and suing the state. You need to give us more inmates. There's more when we return.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So before I get back into this article and tell you more about the problems with private prisons, I want to make sure that I mention at least once during the month of October the FPP Peace Prize. You may have seen me post on Facebook about voting for the FPP Peace Prize. It is now in the 6th year. It was started in 2009 as sort of a protest against the Nobel Prize Committee's or the Nobel Committee's decision to continue honoring people with the Peace Prize who generally, quite frankly, wind up just making more war and not making very much peace. So the FPP Peace Prize is aimed at rewarding with recognition people that are actually doing something to bring about a more peaceful, free society. So you can vote. Voting is open until the first Tuesday of November. Go to peaceprize.fpp.cc, and if you're on a mobile device, you'll actually have to scroll all the way down and click View Full Site, and then the voting will probably, depending on how your mobile device winds up showing, will either be under the content on the page or in the right sidebar. If you're just on a regular computer, the voting is on the right sidebar. And I feel that I must mention that because yes, there's still the nomination form that's up on the page to where people can make nominations, but if you make a nomination for somebody that's nominated, that does not count as a vote for that person. You must cast a vote in the poll. And if you come to Keenvention, which is the last weekend of October, it's actually October 30th through November 1st, there will again be paper ballots for the FPP Peace Prize, so you can cast a paper ballot or the online ballot, and the winners of the FPP Peace Prize will be announced at the beginning of December. So officially it's the first weekend of December. I'll probably wind up doing it on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on that first Friday of December, making the announcement of who is the winner of the 6th annual 2015 FPP Peace Prize. You can also see the list of previous winners that includes Dr. Ron Paul, Ross Ulbricht, Private Manning, Adam Kokesh, antiwar.com, and many other wonderful people who are trying to make the world a better place. So vote peaceprize.fpp.cc. So getting back into the article now about the private prison quotas causing problems, let me just back up here for a moment and tell you about what happened in Arizona, where there was a prison. They had a couple inmates escape. The State Department of Corrections said, yeah, well, we're not sending any more inmates to your prison. The company running the prison, MTC, sued the state of Arizona for $10 million for breach of contract because a line in the contract guaranteed that the prison would remain at 97% capacity. The state eventually renegotiated the contract, but still wound up paying $3 million for empty beds as the company continued to address problems. Far from the exception, Arizona's contractually obligated promise to fill prison beds is a common provision in a majority of America's supposed private prison contracts, according to the public records analysts released, and they say today, but it was back again September 2013, by the advocacy group In the Public Interest. The group reviewed more than 60 contracts between private companies that operate prisons and state and local governments across the country and found language mentioning quotas for prisoners in nearly 2/3 of those analyzed. The prison bed guarantees range from minimums of 70% occupancy in a California prison to 100% occupancy requirements at some of Arizona's prisons. Most of the contracts had language mandating at least 90% of beds be filled. Experts argue that such requirements create an incentive for policymakers to focus on filling empty prison beds as opposed to pursuing long-term policy changes, such as sentencing reform, that could significantly reduce prison populations. In short, many states are effectively obligated to continue to incarcerate people regardless of crime rates and public safety needs, or otherwise hand over taxpayer dollars in order to satisfy private profit-making companies. So it's these weird clauses that require the prisons to have a certain occupancy rate. It is that which is the main reason I am opposed to what are being called private prisons. And again, it's not really a private prison if there's this weird mandated contract with the government and still the government-operated judicial system. An actual private prison would not operate in the way that these companies are operating their prisons with government contracts. And I talked about that back in segment 2, and I'm not going to rehash that. But you've got that going on where there's these requirements of you must provide us X number of inmates. And on top of that, as this article mentioned, that really prevents policymakers, especially policymakers that are aware of the requirements and obligations in the contract, to keep prison rates to keep occupancy rates at the prisons at a certain level. It prevents them from wanting to actually wind up doing any sort of policy reform, such as removing things from the list of jailable offenses. One of the things that absolutely should not be a jailable offense is possession of a substance that you are going to use personally. Now, if you've got something that you intend to sell, as long as you're not committing fraud with it, then yeah, that's fine too. But if you've got a large amount of date rape drug, then, probably you should not have that. I'm not saying that mere possession should be enough to necessarily wind up causing you to go to jail, but if you wind up using it on somebody, then yeah, you're not using it on yourself, and most likely the person you're using it on did not consent to you using it on them. So yeah, you should wind up being punished in some kind of way. But again, like if somebody's walking around with a joint or a small amount of weed or even some crystal meth, then no, they do not deserve to be in jail. If somebody's on probation because they had a small amount of weed or even some crystal meth, and then they wind up getting stopped by the police because the police know who's on probation, And they love trying to find reasons to wind up charging somebody with a VOP. So they'll keep an eye. Oh, all right, here you are, Johnny. You're in trouble again. You got some crystal meth on you. You're coming with us. So, yeah, like, that's completely ludicrous, and it should not happen. Don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send them to me, AMA@FPPRadio.com.